Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. As we begin tonight, let's all turn all of our cell phones on vibrate. Good evening. My name is Reverend Carey A. Grady, and I'm the pastor of the Reed Chapel AME Church and serve as one of the co-presidents of More Justice. It has been my high honor to serve as co-president for 2 consecutive 2-year terms. We know that our new co-presidents will continue to serve More Justice in the spirit of pursuing justice, loving mercy, and walking humbly before thy God. We are not here tonight by accident. Every year we have a listening process, which is designed to hear the stories and concerns of the people so that we best know how to organize and prepare for the year. At our Community Problems Assembly, we report back on what has been shared across our communities at our house meetings. Our purpose tonight is to decide where to prioritize and focus our efforts, whether reaffirming to continue to organize around the same issues that we have already worked on or see what direction we shall go. One of the reasons we organize is because there are so many issues in our community that plague us. If we are not organized, consistent, or methodical, we will be carried in many directions and get nowhere. When we spend time working and organizing on a particular issue, progress will be made. This is the first time that we have gathered all network members since the rally. This is also our first time attempting a partial in-person gathering since COVID-19. And our community online and in person still looks like heaven on earth. Tonight we have 60 persons joining us in person and about 200 who are joining in and online on Zoom. The Community Problems Assembly, although, yes, let's give that a round of applause. Our Community Problems Assembly, although it looks different this year, is our opportunity to know what our network is concerned about. The CPA gives us a chance to use our power and a chance to see the diversity of our group and the power of our justice ministry. So tonight, our Community Problems Assembly is officially called to order. When I say more, you say justice. More! Justice. More! Justice. More! At this time, Reverend Rabbi Case will join us. Our community, like our state, nation, and world, has been deeply affected by COVID-19. Before COVID-19, we had problems with our mental health funding, affordable housing, education, and gun violence. We have seen in this city these issues get worse because of COVID. Every generation in the past has had to deal with community problems and injustices, and the next generation after us will have to deal with them as well. We can learn from those who spent their lives working on community problems and injustices. In the book American Prophets, Dr. Albert J. Raboteau says, America in modern times has had 7 American prophets who touched our society and helped make the world a better place. He names them Abraham Heschel, A.J. Muste, Dorothy Day, the Catholic Worker Movement, Howard Thurman, Thomas Merton, Martin L. King, and Fannie Lou Hamer. But we also cannot forget the work of Susan B. Anthony, Barbara Jordan, Cesar Chavez, and Nelson Mandela, and Bishop Desmond Tutu. 2 of the original 7 were Dr. Martin L. King and Rabbi Abraham Heschel. Both men inspired generations to pursue justice, love mercy, and walk humbly before thy God. Both served God in different religious traditions. The civil rights movement was built on organizing congregations to address community problems. The reason the faith community since the 1960s has been perceived to not have the impact that it did then is because somewhere across time, somewhere across faith, race, economic, and gender lines in local communities, congregations stopped coming together to pursue justice. But in the Midlands, More Justice, which consists of 35 congregations that come together across race, faith, class, and economic lines, we come together to pursue justice. Pursuing justice comes at a cost. When we pursue justice, firstly, we must look at our own lives and make adjustments. Pursuing justice is not pretty or glamorous work. Pursuing justice will cost us our time, our talents, and our resources. Pursuing justice cost Nelson Mandela 27 years in prison, lost time from his wife and family that he never got back again. Martin L. King was on his way to Zion Baptist Church in Columbia, South Carolina on April 3rd, 1968. But because he had promised the sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, that he would support their cause and fight for fair wages, he canceled at Zion Baptist in Columbia downtown and flew to Memphis, Tennessee, spoke at a church, and on the next day, April 4th, 1968, he was assassinated. Surely, if lives have been lost in the pursuit of justice, we can deal with our emails and telephone calls not being answered. We can put up with people not showing up to our Nehemiah Action or even our community problems assembly, or people talking negatively about us because we are trying to hold community leaders accountable. Pursuing justice reprioritizes our lives. Pursuing justice requires that we build people power and hold the king, the pharaoh, the politician, the business leader, our educational leaders, and ourselves accountable. Pursuing justice is not popular, but pursuing justice is our biblical mandate.
We have faced an enemy who does not want to change, and why would they? They're safe. They have been elected, they have their constituency, and they have their paychecks. But our prophets of the past had their mandate as well. Do you think that Martin Luther King or Abraham Joshua Heschel faced no such challenges? The dogs, the fire hoses, the jail, and among those in their own ranks who said, "Don't make too much noise, stop it. You're going to do more harm than good." And yet they persevered, because that is what our traditions demand. When Abraham Joshua Heschel was asked why he was marching in Selma instead of teaching and praying to God for change, he responded, "I am praying with my legs." Change does not happen because we are polite, we tip our hats and curtsy. It only happens because we embrace the truth of the prophets, speaking truth because we are the power. The prophets of old spoke their words, and often the words fell upon deaf ears. Sometimes they spoke and no one listened. Sometimes God's people suffered because they did not adhere to the messages of the prophets. We think, too, amongst all of those people who spoke of injustice, like Mahatma Gandhi, who paid with his life for speaking the truth. Today, through more justice, we speak truth to power. We warn the king and the pharaoh not listening to the voices and cries of the people. Abraham Joshua Heschel asked, "Where is God in America today?" He is at home with those who are complacent, indifferent to other people's agony, and devoid of mercy? No. Is he not rather with the poor and the contrite in the slums? "Dark is the world for me," he said, "for all its cities and states. If not for the few signs of God's radiance, who could stand such agony, such darkness?" Where in America today do we hear voices like the voice of the prophets of Israel? Martin Luther King is a sign that God has not forsaken the United States of America. He asked all those who would listen, "Who will stand with me?" He cried this out, Abraham Joshua Heschel did, having narrowly escaped the extermination camps of the Nazis and came to America to find that here in America, African Americans were Untermenschen, like the Jews of Germany, subhuman, in this new land while 6 million of his own family were slaughtered. He said, in a free society, some are guilty, but all are responsible. He said these words as he traveled to Selma. Derision, spittle, and fire hoses aimed at young people and tortured. They were tortured by the authorities. Nothing would quell their vision and his vision of a just society, for they and he had seen far too much. We have come so far since then, but there's so much more, so many more miles to log yet. Heschel again remarked, at the first conference on religion and race, the main participants were Pharaoh and Moses. The outcome of that summit meeting has not yet come to an end. Pharaoh is not ready to capitulate. The Exodus began, but is far from having been completed. In fact, it was easier for the children of Israel to cross the Red Sea than for a Negro to cross certain university campuses. The new Pharaoh builds pyramids of disparity where the poor have no voice, are gerrymandered so they count less, and are marked by violence, brutality, and an uncaring community for mental health and children whose reading levels ensure them a life of unequal earnings.
We have made progress. Dr. King, during the Montgomery bus boycott, transformed bus systems all across the country because of the power of a boycott. The boycott lasted 381 days, from December 5th, 1955 to December 20th, 1956. The people decided that they would come together and carpool or walk to work, rain, snow, sleet, or hail. The bus company could not withstand the absence of people and their money. The boycott collapsed the bus company, so the powers that be gave into the demands of organized people. The result was an integrated bus company that provided service to all people. What would have happened on that December day if Rosa Parks would have just silently sat at the back of the bus like she was demanded to go? What would have happened if she would have just paid her fine after she was arrested and gone home quietly? Prophetic activity is empowering people to stand up for ourselves together to make the world and our community a better place. When people are organized and together, we can change our community and the world.
What is the essence of being a prophet? A prophet is a person who holds God and men in one thought at the same time, at all times, again, said Heschel. We have been refused audiences with our political leaders. We have been refused sacred spaces to gather because we are one and will not tolerate segregation of color or faith. We have been belittled by school superintendents and threatened by the summoning of police. We are the prophets who refuse to be pushed aside when people are evicted from their homes, when gun battles rage in our streets and police refuse to listen and heed our concerns and proposed solutions. We will not be swept aside. We will not be ignored or belittled when our school boards serve their own interests and not the students in their care. We resolutely stood shoulder to shoulder and demanded police educate their own officers in CIT in saving precious lives. We accept our role as the carriers of the prophets to bring justice to this land.
Prophetic work is not easy work. The work of the prophets transcends our religious traditions. Prophetic activity is hearing the voice of God and speaking it and holding our community accountable and to a higher standard. Prophetic activity is built on building a community for all God's people. Prophetic work has not taken place when African American students in District 1 are suspended at higher rates than other students. Prophetic activity is not taking place when our brothers and sisters with mental and behavioral health issues are shunned in our society. Prophetic activity is not taking place when there is a lack of affordable housing for all of God's people. Prophetic activity does not reign in our community when there are major healthcare disparities that are divisive. We can't work on all of the community problems at the same time. But when we work to alleviate one problem, we automatically are making progress in another issue. Martin L. King said, "A threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." When we read our sacred texts, it is clear that God has a vision of abundance for God's people. That abundance can be disrupted when we break fundamental human laws. We have made progress, yes we have, but we have so much more to do. Let's continue to organize our congregations to hear and listen to the cries of our people through our house meetings. Let's continue to organize and hold our community leaders and ourselves accountable. Let us pursue justice, love mercy, and continue to walk humbly before thy God. Amen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Reverend Jackie Utley, and I pastor at Ascension Lutheran Church in Eau Claire, North Columbia. I am the Vice President of More Justice, and I serve on the Gun Violence Steering Committee.
And my name is David Lee. I'm a team leader at Shandon United Methodist Church, and I'm on the More Justice Mental Health Steering Committee.
Over the past few weeks, we have extended an invitation to meet with each of the candidates for mayor of the city of Columbia. We know that whoever fills this role will have a voice in addressing some of the most serious problems facing our city. We met virtually with Mr. Sam Johnson, Councilman Daniel Rickman, and Mr. Mo Badura. We have a meeting scheduled with Councilwoman Tamika Isaac Devine this coming Thursday.
In your agenda packet, there's a sheet that summarizes the candidates' responses as we met with them. We will send out an updated sheet after we meet with Councilwoman Devine this week. We introduced the candidates in those meetings to the mission of our organization and to the history of our campaigns around mental health, affordable housing, and gun violence. After we gave background on each issue, we opened the floor for each candidate to ask us questions. And then we asked them if they would support our efforts on each of these issues. Finally, we asked them to attend the Community Problems Assembly tonight. And,
candidates, is that?
excuse me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And last week, we emailed them to confirm their attendance tonight and told them exactly what we would ask them tonight.
And so now, candidates, I invite you to join us on the stage. And tonight we have with us Councilman Daniel Rickman and Mr. Mo Badura. I was in touch with Mr. Sam Johnson earlier, and he said he was running behind, but he was trying to be here. However, I see that unfortunately he has not made it with us. And so I see that Councilwoman Tamika Isaac Devine declined our invitation to make the time to be here this evening.
We invited the candidates here tonight as an opportunity for them to show their commitment to working alongside the community. As More Justice, we join together each spring for our large Nehemiah Action Assembly, where we gather over 1,000 people from our 35 congregations to take action on our chosen problem areas. We would like to invite each of the candidates to attend that meeting. And since Mr. Johnson isn't here, I'll go ahead. Jackie.
Okay.
Councilman Rickman, will you attend the Nehemiah Action on April 4th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m.?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's give a hand. Thank you so much. And so, Mr. Badura, will you attend our Nehemiah Action on April 4th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m.?
I'll be honored.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And so, in summary, you've all witnessed it here this evening. We have Councilman Rickman and Mr. Badura who have committed to attend our Nehemiah Action. Let's give them another hand.
Thank you to the candidates for being here this evening and to take time to meet with us. We feel like good, effective leaders always have time to listen to their community members. And we know that you're very busy on your campaigns. So it speaks well that you're willing to pause and listen to such a diverse cross-section of the Columbia community. I know you heard Reverend Grady tell you how many people were online. We're sort of underrepresented maybe here, but we have a lot of people online watching too. So finally, we'd like to encourage everybody to get out and vote. If you live in Richland School District 1, there's actually an election tomorrow for an open board seat. Next Tuesday, the mayor election and the open city council seats will be held. So thank you once again to the candidates. We wish you the best in your campaigns, and we invite you to be seated and stay for the rest of our program. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Father Sandy McDonald. I'm pastor of St. John Neumann Catholic Church, and I'm a member of the executive board. Over the past several weeks, each of our congregations has held small group house meetings to share the community problems that are of most concern and worrying to us. Through house meeting conversations, we learn that in the problems we face, we're not alone, and that in the work of more justice, we have an opportunity to take action on them to bring about change for good and for justice. Just as I've been, every time we've held the Community Problems Assembly, I've been inspired by the house meetings that I've attended. Gathering with other people invites a conversation that all too rarely happens in regular interactions. We reveal something of our hearts when we share about our concerns, and I'm encouraged by how my neighbors care about the poor and those who cannot flourish fully in our community. At the approximately 60 house meetings that took place this year, 500 or so people shared about what is worrying to them or what keeps them up at night. We also invited sharing about how environmental change can have negative effects through, for example, flooding, mold, rising temperatures, health impacts of pollution, and more. This year, many of the stories and themes that came to the surface during our house meetings are related to our already existing issue campaigns. In other words, stories surfaced regarding gun violence, crime, and safety in our neighborhoods, schools, and places of worship. Also, lack of safe and affordable housing, and people having to choose between safe housing and paying for groceries or childcare. And rising rates of mental illness, and wanting to know that our law enforcement officers are equipped to help and not hurt in a time of crisis. There were other themes and issues that arose in house meetings. But when team leaders reported back on what was shared at house meetings, the majority of the stories that were shared related mainly to the problems we are already working on. Because we also asked about how climate and environmental change is affecting us, we heard many stories about people being impacted by the environment. Yet even here, many of the stories related to the housing work that we are already doing. Overall, the ways that environmental impact is affecting our community are proving to be a complex problem based on the many ways you shared about concerns around it. Other than how housing can be made unsafe by environmental change or causes, our house meeting stories were inconclusive about where to narrow down this issue. Based on the input from house meetings, the executive board met last Tuesday to develop a recommendation for us to consider at this Community Problems Assembly. The executive board believes that we are at a critical time for more justice. We're building momentum to achieve wins on an affordable housing trust fund and a new initiative to curb gun violence. At the same time, we're also very aware that the pandemic has had an impact on the ministry, and our momentum is at risk. Because most of our meetings were virtual, it's been difficult to draw from the energy that comes from being present together. A justice ministry is a very relational project, and our power is stronger when we are visibly together in person to advocate with officials. And we do all we can to enable this at the Nehemiah Action. We need to be wise in our use of resources at hand to achieve wins in the areas we are currently addressing. To that end, the executive board proposes a primary recommendation with an alternative that the More Justice Network can also choose based on our caucuses tonight. The proposal is this: option 1, that the More Justice Network choose to continue working with our existing issues without the addition of a new issue. And option 2, after consultation of the network members tonight, if there is a desire for an additional new issue from this year's House meetings, we propose that it be under the area of environmental justice. If this course is chosen by the network, a steering committee, like our other issues, would be created for this issue to explore how we can address this area with a report back to the More Justice Network at the Nehemiah Action in April, and to address the area with asks of public officials at the 2023 Nehemiah Action. In other words, we would give ourselves a longer period of research and preparation for action over the course of this year's justice cycle in order that we will be prepared for action in 2023. Having these two options reflects something good. As an organization, we are close to winning in some of our existing campaigns or on making some big headway. We want to be wise about not taking on more than we can chew so that we can be effective in areas we are already addressing. Based on the major themes in the listening process, we will vote this evening to either, 1, continue working on our existing issues without an addition of a new issue, or 2, add a new issue under environmental impact. If this second option is chosen, the Research Steering Committee would report back at the Nehemiah Action about their findings and prepare for an ask at the 2023 Nehemiah Action. The Executive Board recommends option 1. However, the entire network of More Justice has the decision-making power on this question. Before we take a caucus on the strategy we will adopt, we will first hear updates about our current issues as well as a report on the results of listening about environmental impacts at our House meetings. Thank you, and may God bless and empower the work we do this year on behalf of justice in our community.
My name is Mary Ann Wright, and I am a team leader at Adams Northeast AME Church and a member of the Mental Health Steering Committee. In the fall of 2017, at an assembly just like this one, our members voted to prioritize mental health for research and action. We learned that people in our community were being criminalized for their mental illness, and that our law enforcement officers were not trained to de-escalate and help someone in a mental health crisis. This is near and dear to my heart because of my brother Henry. My brother Henry is diagnosed as bipolar, a paranoid schizophrenic, and then also at the age of 60, he was diagnosed with early onset dementia. Henry got into an altercation with one of the residents at the assisted living facility where he resided. And as a result, Henry was arrested and charged with assault, and he spent 4 long days at the Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. As you can imagine, that is probably the worst place for anyone to be in the midst of a mental health crisis. At our Nehemiah Action in the spring of 2018, we asked Sheriff Lott and Chief Holbrook to train all of their officers in crisis intervention training, or CIT, within 3 years. And at that time, they agreed. Since that time, Columbia Police Department has gone from having 8 officers trained in CIT to over 150, and Richland County Sheriff's Department now has approximately 80 officers trained. This year, we met with Chief Holbrook and Sheriff Lott and heard from them that after 3 years, that this commitment that they made in public in front of 1,300 people was impossible. As you can imagine, this was quite shocking for us to hear. It is not in our interest as More Justice to push for anything that is truly impossible, because that would be a waste of our time, money, and resources. So in early October, we scheduled a meeting with with the South Carolina Director of Crisis Intervention Training with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, to ascertain their capacity for providing training in crisis intervention. What we learned is that it is within NAMI's capacity to provide 5 trainings at 25 persons each, to be divided between Columbia Police Department and Richland County Sheriff's Department within each year. We now plan to use this information to ask for a shifted commitment from Chief Holbrook and Sheriff Lott to use and utilize all of those sessions each year. Our goal is still to have 100% of our law enforcement officers trained in crisis intervention, because people do not get to choose the officer they call if they're trained to help someone in a mental health crisis.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Rivers, and I am a team leader at Reed Chapel AME Church. At the Near My Action in April, I shared my story about a man who was shot and killed not even 100 feet from my front door. I was sitting in my living room watching the news broadcast when all of a sudden I heard gunfire. Pow! 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 I knew someone had been injured. I yelled for my daughter to get down, get down. I live directly across the street from a city park, and I automatically worried about the children who might have been injured. I looked out my window and I saw people running for cover. I also saw a body of a man dead on the street. Since then, we have been experiencing more and more gun violence in our community. Recently, a 2-year-old girl was shot in her home. There are shootings all over the Midlands. I am afraid of more innocent people will be hit by a stray bullet in their own homes. I am afraid to be anywhere when it's dark, but I know that I am not even truly safe where it is light in my own home. Our member voted to address the rampant gun violence in our community 2 years ago. For much of that time, we have been in a pandemic, and during this time, gun violence has increased all over the country. We met with the chief earlier this year. He told us that gun violence was down by a couple of percentage points. That did not last long. This year, gun violence is up in Columbia by 29%. That is entirely too high. That is entirely too high. I live in fear in my neighborhood and in my home that this man died directly across the street from my home in front of a city park. And there are 6 unsolved murders right now pending in the Columbia district. The police chief has called for the community involvement, and yet when we asked him to attend our Near My Action meeting assembly, where over 1,000 community members come together because we want to see this problem addressed, the chief refused. The police, the Columbia police car says policing excellence through community partnership. This doesn't message of partnership or being willing to partner. We are asking for as more justice is for the City of Columbia to partner with experts who have a track record of decreasing violence in our other cities because of the problem. We just keep getting worse. People are being shot and killed every week. and we want to see our city take this problem seriously by bringing in experts and partnering with the National Network for Safe Communities. At the research kickoff in November, we will strategize and decide how to proceed with our gun violence campaign to work for a Columbia that is safer for everyone. Thank you for your time, and please continue to be safe.
Hello, my name is Diana Dederick. I am one of the co-presidents for More Justice, and I'm the deacon at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Columbia. 3 years ago, our community voted to address lack of affordable and safe housing. And since then, we have been pushing for an affordable housing trust fund in Richland County. A housing trust fund, when implemented, will create hundreds, if not thousands, of units of affordable housing in our community every single year. 2 years ago, we voted to prioritize this issue after hundreds of people across the Midlands shared their own stories about being evicted, living in housing with mold and pests, or the constant worry of not being able to meet rent. And we keep hearing those stories today. I would like to introduce you to two women, Shirley and Carolyn. Shirley is a 74-year-old widow who lives alone. 6 years ago, she was fortunate enough to find a duplex that she could afford on her $850 a month Social Security benefits. Her unit was $325 a month. So with her food stamps and the local churches who have food pantries, Shirley was able to make ends meet. On September 30th, Shirley received a letter from her leasing agent informing her that the owner of her duplex had sold the duplex to another entity, and that entity had decided to raise the building. She has until the end of November to find affordable housing. Carolyn is 68 and disabled. She is never married and she lives alone. Carolyn lives in the Broad River Road area of Columbia, and she receives $1,090 a month disability. She also pays $650 a month rent. That was really pushing it for her. That was approximately 65% of her income. But again, like with Shirley, she lived close enough to area churches that had food pantries that she was able to survive on her $1,000 or so monthly income. Unfortunately for Carolyn, she received a letter from the manager of her apartment complex at the 1st of October informing her that her rent would be raised beginning November 1st. The rent would go from $650 a month to $1,050 a month, an amazing increase of $400 a month. There is no way that Carolyn can stay where she feels safe and happy with this large raise of rent. There is no place in Columbia that she can afford. She needs a bottom floor apartment. She needs an apartment with washer and dryer connections. She needs to pay less than $600 a month. It does not exist. Shirley and Carolyn are just two examples that we've heard across our House meetings. The Housing Trust Fund has been in committee for over a year. And if this had been addressed a year ago, maybe Shirley and Carolyn and all the others like them would have a place to go. That is why we are here tonight. That is why I am a member of More Justice, because it is only through the power of organized people that we can make a change.
Good evening. My name is Reverend James Woodley, and I am the pastor of the Gill Creek Baptist Church, and also I am on the executive board and the Housing Steering Committee of More Justice. The policy to just create the Housing Trust Fund has been in development and services committee of the Richland County Council for over a year, as was just stated. In the meantime, over 16,000 families are still in need of affordable and safe housing in Richland County. At our Nehemiah Action, we got commitments from County Council Chair Paul Livingston and council members Terratio, Barron, and Walker to vote yes to establish a Richland County Trust Fund. Last month, we met with the leaders of the Greenville Housing Trust Fund and learned how they were able to get their fund started and how they continue to be successful. This month, Michael Anderson, the director of the Housing Trust Fund project at the Center for Community Change, presented on trust funds for the City of Columbia Housing Task Force. On that task force sit leaders from the city, Richland County Council, and other nonprofit organizations focused on housing in the Midlands. Richland County is receiving over $80 million in American Rescue Plan Act money. So our county has a golden opportunity to create a trust fund, allocate American Rescue Plan money, and be a part of a long-term solution to this long-term crisis. Other counties across the country are doing this, so we should too. On past Friday, we met with County Councilwoman Allison Terratio. First, let me thank, on behalf of More Justice and the Housing Steering Committee, for her time, her commitment, and interest to this much-needed cause. However, I must admit, we left the meeting disappointed. We thought we were much further along in the process of getting a trust fund, but I learned, along with my committee members, that in her mind and in the council's mind, we are just at the beginning. The Housing Trust Fund has not been presented to council. There is no concrete plan, and Councilwoman Terratio confirmed that council members have received information on the trust fund. We have no way of knowing if they've even read the information. We can only assume a good number of them have not. What a disappointment. Our takeaways were this. She committed to follow up with Councilwoman Barron about American Rescue Plan allocation and about scheduling an informational meeting for council members to learn more. We are disappointed. And this is not what we were promised. Our council has had at least a full year to learn more as the trust fund has been in committee. The question was about where to get the money. But now that we have the money with the American Rescue Plan funds, and they still won't make a decision. Only part of the American Rescue Plan funding to Richland County has been allocated. This money, we learned, has gone to bonuses for Richland County staff who have worked throughout the pandemic, rightly so, and towards updated safety technology at the jail, I'm sure also rightly so. From our meeting with Councilwoman Terratio, however, we learned that making the decisions to allocate those funds was easy for the council members. It was easy for them to push their initiatives, but this greater need for everyone to have a safe and affordable place to live seems to be less important. Money can go towards all kinds of initiatives, but unless housing is a top priority, kids cannot learn, families cannot have peace of mind, and physical and mental health will deteriorate across the community. Can you now understand our disappointment? We came from this meeting knowing that our county is failing to prioritize the people who need their help the most. This is just simply disappointing. We need to show our council members that housing needs to be a top priority. Tonight, we ask that you fill out why it is important to you that Richland County prioritize the Housing Trust Fund and a long-term solution to the housing crisis. If you or someone you know and love has a housing testimony, please include that. We will get these together to present to the council. If you are joining in person, there are templates in the pews for you to fill out and leave in the pews when you leave. Please take advantage of that now. If you are joining us via Zoom, there will be a link in the chat box. You should see that right about now, as well as in the agenda packet. Please either fill out online and email it to your team leader or More Justice, or mail to the More Justice office. We will also be planning a rally. This is our takeaway. We will also be planning a rally for housing for us to come together and make sure this problem gets the attention it deserves. So be on the lookout for this information. What is our call? What is our call? What is our call? Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is LaDonna Harvin, and I'm a team leader at Bethel AME Church. As most of you know, this year we asked a new house meeting question focused on how our community, and especially the most marginalized in our community, are impacted by the environment. This came about through a partnership with 17 other sister justice organizations similar to ours, and was inspired by Pope Francis' encyclical Laudato Si about our role as people of faith in caring for God's creation. So for about a year and a half, More Justice has had 2 representatives to learn more about these efforts and how we might apply these lessons at the local level. The foundation for everything we focus on as an organization is the stories of our people. So we brought this question to our people in our house meetings this year. How has your health, your family, your community been impacted by floods, heat, pollution, mold, hunger, utility bills, or effects of storms or hurricanes? We asked this question to see what, if any, stories we had about the environmental impact on the local level. It turns out the problem runs deep, as nearly everyone had a story to share. Many of the stories were related to the 1,000-year flood of 2015. It was easy for me to come up with my answer to this question. When the 1,000-year flood hit in 2015, I was living in the basement of my mom's house. It had been raining for days, and there were flash flood warnings all the time. I woke up on a Sunday morning to get ready for church and hadn't even turned on the light when I stepped in ankle-deep water. I turned on the light and saw about a foot of water covering the whole downstairs. I opened the door and the water came out like a waterfall out of the room. We had to pull up the carpet, the tile, and everything that was on the closet floor had to be thrown away. We had insurance, but it still cost around $7,000. And even then, I did a lot of the work myself, pulling up carpet and tile and wiping everything down. I had to throw away some furniture. And my mom lives in Colonial Heights, which is not an area that's by major rivers or lakes, so there was no reason for the water to come in, but it did because it had rained for so many days. The water had nowhere else to go but in the basement. I was also working at Lexington County at the time when the Gibson Pond Dam, that broke, and everything at the bottom of that hill beyond Gibson Pond was flooded and ruined also. And they're just repairing that 6 years later after everything at the bottom of the hill was flooded and ruined. In our house meetings, we heard stories all across the board of how people have been impacted by the environment. A member nearly died being caught in the floods while driving. Utility bills were the highest they've ever been for some people this summer. People are living in food deserts without transportation. Their only source of groceries is the Family Dollar or Dollar General. Living with tap water that is undrinkable, and so many more. We took time during our listening process to see if there were these stories to uncover, and nearly everyone had a story to share. It is clear that we are impacted by the environment in ways we hadn't thought of before. Thank you.
Hello, friends. My name is Mother Caitlin. I am one of the Episcopal priests at St. Martin's in the Fields Church in Forest Acres. Now that we've heard our issue updates and some examples of what was shared during our listening process, it's time for us to take a vote. Please pay close attention, as this process is a little different than when it was when we gathered 2 years ago. So whether you're attending this CPA in person or on Zoom, you'll answer the same questions. First, you'll be asked if you're a network member. If you are not yet a network member, now is your opportunity to do so. This commitment includes 3 things. Number 1, attending 3 or more organization-wide meetings this year. Number 2, attending your congregational network meeting. And number 3, bringing 3 or more people with you to the Nehemiah Action. Only committed network members are permitted to cast a vote. Only committed network members are permitted to cast a vote. If you're not ready to become a network member tonight, please participate with your caucus up until that point. Fill out the form, participate with your folks from your church, but refrain from voting. Only committed network members may cast a vote for our issues this year. Then our network members will be asked to cast that vote regarding either continuing with our open issue campaigns or choosing a new issue under the environmental impact umbrella. Like Father Sandy mentioned earlier, the executive board recommends continuing with the existing problem areas. But all of our decisions as an organization come from our members. You will be choosing one of 2 things: to continue working on our existing issues without the addition of a new issue, or to add a new issue under environmental impact. If the second option is chosen, the Research Steering Committee will report back at the Nehemiah Action about their findings and prepare for an ask at the 2023 Nehemiah Action. And finally, when you go to your caucus, you will vote on a new slate of executive board members for 2022. These nominees are listed in your agenda packets. On behalf of the nominating committee of the executive board, I move that the proposed slate of executive board nominees be approved. And because it comes from an organizational committee, it does not need a second. If you're joining us online, there is a link in your agenda, and it will also be sent to you in the chat box for you to cast your vote. If you have any questions about how to complete this, please either call your team leader or ask away in the chat box. Somebody will help you, I promise. If you're joining us in person here at Reed Chapel, a caucus leader will guide you and your group through these questions. We'll have about 15 minutes to do this. This is also a great time for you to either complete your investment from 2021 or turn in all or part of your investment for our next justice cycle. If you are here in Reed Chapel, you can put your check in the envelope in your pew and leave it there, or you can use the QR code up there to give with the Givelify link. If you're online, you can make your investment by mailing a check to More Justice or finding us Again, at the GiveLaFly link, Central Midlands Justice Ministry. Use the QR code. I will see you all in a few minutes with our results.
Everyone, while you're still doing the voting and everything, at this time, David and I will come before you once more because he is a man of his word. Our candidate for mayor, Mr. Sam Johnson, is in the building at this time, and so we will invite him up. There's a saying where they say, better late than never. We're so happy that you were able to make it here. Sorry you were running behind. So I have to extend an invitation to you, Mr. Johnson. Will you attend our Nehemiah Action on April 4th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m.?
Absolutely, and on time.
All right. How about that?
Thank you for being here, Mr. Johnson. We're sorry you got held up, but we appreciate you taking time to listen tonight to our concerns.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Helen Derpinghouse, a member of Living Springs Lutheran Church, and I'm here to talk to you about our investment drive. The Community of Problems Assembly is our first full gathering of the More Justice annual cycle, and it's fitting for us to take a look at our financial investments in our justice organization. Where do we stand? 2021 has been another challenging year. For many of us, we have continued to think more deeply about our finances and how we can best use what we have for the calling we have been given in life and for the work of God's kingdom in our troubled world. Every year as network members, we're invited to invest $200 or whatever is a meaningful amount for each of us to make justice a reality in our community. $200 in an entire year is about 55 cents a day or less than $17 a month. We continue to ask ourselves the question, how much am I willing to invest financially to honor God's requirement, not just to love kindness and walk humbly with the Lord, but to do justice? Our financial stewardship is one way we respond to God's call to do justice. For me, I invest in the work of More Justice because of what I have witnessed through my participation over the last 4 years. I've seen that our work together really has made the Midlands a better place. For example, by speaking up and speaking together, More Justice has made Columbia safer for people with mental illness through CIT law enforcement training. We accomplished something together that years of committee meetings and agency requests had not achieved. A second reason I invest is because I deeply value the opportunity to work together with so many diverse congregations and people of faith. The stories that we share and the relationships that we build here give me a sense of what God's kingdom really looks like. I want to be part of that. This year, More Justice Network members committed about $83,000 for the work of justice. And amazingly, in spite of the COVID impact, we have graciously invested about $70,000 for the vision of God's kingdom here in this community. We are blessed by a God of abundance, and we have responded with an open hand. Reviewing these numbers also shows that there's still work to do. We have a little over $10,000 outstanding in those commitments for 2021. We need to try to complete our investments to make up for the gap for the year. The chat box for those of you online shows the Giveify link and the More Justice office address if you prefer to mail a check-in. For those making an investment tonight, please note whether the investment goes toward the past year that we're completing now, 2020, 2021, or for the year ahead, 2021-22. More Justice is blessed to have partners that also invest in our justice work. Tonight, we'd like to include a very warm thank you to these organizations: the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, the Knight Foundation, Sisters of Charity South Carolina, Presbyterian Hunger Program, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, and the Episcopal Church of America. That's right. Warm thanks to our partners. And may the God of great abundance continue to guide us and bless us in our justice work together.
Good evening. My name is Jim Zeke. I'm a team leader at Living Springs Lutheran Church. I was a part of the nominating committee this year alongside Verna Green from St. John Newman Catholic Church, Lisa Brownlee from Emmanuel Baptist Fellowship, and our continuing co-president, Deacon Deanna Diedrich from St. Luke's Episcopal. Before I continue, let's thank the 2021 Executive Board for their leadership. Thank you. The nominating committee's task was to create a slate of executive board nominees from dues-paying congregations who bring passion and dedication to the work and represent the rich diversity of our organization. Each year, officers cycle on and off the executive board to maintain this diversity of voices and leadership. On your agenda, you will find those listed and nominated. Nominees, please join me on stage if you are present in person tonight. All nominees have accepted their nomination and are as follows. Co-President, Deacon Deanna Diedrich, St. Luke's Episcopal. Co-President, Reverend Jackie Utley, Ascension Lutheran. Vice President, Mary Ann Wright, Adams Northeast, AME. Treasurer, Helen Durpinghouse, Living Springs Lutheran. Secretary, Rabbi Jonathan Case, Beth Shalom Synagogue. Communications Officer, Amanda Hamilton, Tree of Life Synagogue. Development Officer, Paul Beasley, Pine Grove AME. At Large, Reverend Frank, Living Springs Lutheran Church. At Large, Father Peter Sousa, Our Lady of Hills Catholic. At Large, Reverend James Woodley, Gill Creek Baptist. At Large, Sharon Williams, North Minster Presbyterian. Nominating Committee, Charlie Payne, Rehoboth Baptist. Nominating Committee, Marilyn Williams, Our Lady of the Hills Catholic. Nominating Committee, David Lee, Shandon United Methodist. Please join me on stage. Every person has accepted the responsibilities and duties in leading More Justice starting in January. Newly elected 2022 executive board members, whether you are at Reed Chapel or are joining us online, please repeat after me. I state your name. Do hereby solemnly affirm to uphold the Constitution and bylaws of More Justice, as required by the Constitution and bylaws, and to perform all those duties as mandated by the Community Problems Assembly. A round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for caucusing and submitting your votes online. I've got numbers for you. Out of the votes we have received, 194 people voted to keep our focus on already active issues this year, and 50 voted to choose a new focus around environmental issues. Y'all have spoken, the people have spoken, and we now have the base for our efforts this next year. Our committees will gather next at the research kickoff on Thursday, November 18th at 6:30 p.m. Take out your calendar. Thursday, November 18th, 6:30 p.m., research kickoff. That's where we'll strategize the next steps. If you'd like to be a part of the research process at all, please be sure to attend this important meeting. Make sure you register through the link that is in the newsletter, and if you need help finding the link, call your team leader. Most of the time, your team leader will solve all of your problems. Also, please be sure, while you've got your calendar out right now, to mark down these dates. March 14th will be the rally. The Nehemiah action will be April 4th. And the celebration will be on May 23rd of next year. If you didn't get that, I promise it'll be in the newsletter. Information about your congregational network meeting will come soon. Thank y'all.
Greeting. I pray that everyone is well, and we are excited about what is ahead and what is to come. I do want to, before I give the charge, just reiterate what is found at the end of the agenda that you have received. And they ask the question, are you passionate about justice? Make it a job. More Justice is hiring an associate community organizer. We know that we have Lizzie, who is doing a great job and great work, but this work is so important. This work is so important that we want to do all that we can to help and encouraging and soliciting others to help in this work, particularly in a higher capacity. Again, I'm Dr. Ivory Thickpen, pastor of Rehoboth Baptist Church here in Columbia, a member of More Justice, and it is my responsibility to give you the charge, the closing charge. It has been said that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And I simply want to add tonight that this arc can only bend by the collective weight and pressure of those who create the necessary tension. What we share, regardless of our faith or our denomination, at our core is a commitment to what we believe is important. And by designating justice and the work of justice as something we believe in and we no doubt know is important, we must be that collective weight. We must be that pressure that creates that necessary tension. This moral arc does not bend automatically, but instead we must create a tension that is constant. We must create a tension that refuses to stand idle. We must create a tension that calls out hypocrisy. We must create a tension that demands action without delay. We must create a tension that knows no fear, and a tension that is not only invested in others, but is a catalyst for change. I therefore charge each and every one of you under the sound of my voice and all those who may be viewing on other platforms, I charge you this day to create the necessary tension, to hold that tension, and for you and for me and for each one of us to be arc benders. For indeed, the moral arc does not bend alone, but it is bent by the collective weight and the pressures of those who know it necessary and create a necessary tension. If you will do that, if you will be that arc bender and create the necessary tension, say, I will. I will. You have so been charged. God bless.